My name is Brandy and welcome to my series, Shit That Happened When I Worked for Adult Protective Services. I have a co-star today. Okay, before I get into the series and start off with the story about my client with a necrotic toe whose dog ate it off and he didn't know, I want to give you guys some backstory about Adult Protective Services. I worked for Texas Department of Family and Protective Services, specifically Adult Protective Services. Texas Adult Protective Services is the leader in the United States for protective services. Every one of our employees had the ability to go to our conference annually, and then other states would send their very top person to learn and then go back to their state and disperse the information, and that's something that I'm really proud of. Just to err on the side of caution for anonymity, I won't tell you what regions I worked in or give the locations of any of the cases I talk about, but I want to explain how Adult Protective Services deems who is a client and what population they serve, and then going forward a lot of this will make more sense. In the state of Texas, everything for Adult Protective Services is driven by the TAC, the Texas Administrative Code, specifically Title 40, Part 19, Chapter 705. Chapter 705 is where we lived, breathed, and died as investigators. Within Chapter 705, Subchapter A, it defined everything that related to Adult Protective Services. Why is this important? Because it's literally the law as to what is considered valid versus invalid and who can be served, and it removes the ability for individuals working for the agency to include their bias. Adult Protective Services investigates allegations of abuse, neglect, or exploitation of persons automatically 65 and older, or those 18 to 64 living with a disability that substantially impacts their ability to provide self-care. I haven't worked there in like 6 years and that still just rattles off my tongue like yesterday. The most important thing to remember when I start telling you guys these stories is that adults have the right to make their own decisions so long as they have not deemed to lack capacity by the courts. I'm going to say that again. Adults have the autonomy to make their own decisions, which includes continuing to live in a state of self-neglect, so long as they have the capacity to make their own decisions, they have not been deemed incapacitated by the courts, and they do not face imminent, serious self-harm or death within the next 7 days. It is not to be taken lightly to go through the court system and deem an adult incompetent and try to get them marked as lacking the ability to make their own decisions because they essentially become a child in the court's eyes. So the state of Texas Administrative Code states that in order for that to happen, you have to prove, and a judge has to agree, and a physician has to co-sign that that person is facing imminent, serious risk or death within the next 7 days. Here we go. I'm going to make a playlist of my stories, and I just know that people are going to think it's wild that more wasn't done on some of these cases. My favorite thing to say when I talk to someone who disagrees with the outcomes of these stories is that you either love or hate the outcome, depending on which side of the fence you're standing on, and you're either the client or you're the client's family members. Because remember, every adult has the right to make their own decisions so long as they are not incapacitated.